Okay, so what is nuclear medicine? You generally get the idea as far as I can see by the answers. So, the most important thing. Oh, the picture is not working. Okay, the most important thing about nuclear medicine is that we also use here the ionizing radiation. This is very similar to X-rays. Yes, so we also do not want to get it as too much and so on. But the main difference is the source of the rays. Oh, sorry. Here. So, good. As we were already explaining, in RTG we are producing in some machine the X-rays and they shine on the patient. Yes? In case of the nuclear medicine, it's opposite. So we have the patient, we give them usually intravenously some radioactive substance, and then the patient shines X-rays all around. And we see these X-rays on the special receptors generally. So nuclear medicine is very similar to the CT scan from the perspective that we are dealing with similar rays of the similar energies. So the rays, the part of the the part of the electromagnetic spectrum that shines just through the body parts without problem. But here we have these rays that are produced in the body from these radioactive substances, and we do not need to add them from outside. And counterintuitively, generally in case of the nuclear medicine studies, in most of the cases, not all, the dosages to the patients are smaller than the dosages in the classical radiology, at least in many cases. So it's not like that it is more dangerous than the classic radiology, generally speaking. Of course, it depends. So, a dose of radiation is given internally to the patient, and the X-rays are counted as they leave the body. Some nuclear medicine studies provide functional information in addition to the anatomic information. About this we'll get later. We'll get short presentation about nuclear medicine later. So, ultrasound. About ultrasound we already were talking about. You answered, most of you at least, answered about this on previous question. However, just to get it organized in your head. So we have the ultrasonography. How does it work? The idea behind nearly all of the imaging studies is similar. So we need to have something that penetrates into the body and then activates specialistic receptors. Yes? So in case of the X-rays, CT scan, fluoroscopy, nuclear medicine studies, there were some X-rays that get out of the body or through the body, and we were able to see them thanks to the specialized receptors, specialized machines, specialized cassettes, something that can detect those X-rays, generally speaking. So we have some mode of energy. In this case, we had the X-rays, and then we need to have something that would recognize this. Yes, that would be able to see it. And this is the same idea generally in all of the radiology, in all of the nuclear medicine also. So, what is happening here in the ultrasonography? In the ultrasonography, this energy, these rays, maybe it's not rays exactly, but this energy, this medium, are the ultrasound. What is the ultrasound? The ultrasound is the sound, as the name suggests, that has very high frequency. So generally it's the sound that we cannot hear by our own ears. These are the sounds that are well suited to imagine the body. So let's imagine that we are in the mountains. Yeah. So we are generally in the mountains. Yes, we are in some canyon. Let's get it. And if you would scream, you would hear after some time that your voice would get back. Yes, you would see the echo. So loud, and you would hear back what you scream, and so on. Yes. So this shows an important property of sound. That if it gets to something solid, like a wall, like a rock, it can bounce back. And let's imagine that some mountain, some rock is close to you, relatively close to you. If you would hear the echo immediately after you scream, you know that this is close. If you would scream and hear the echo after a long time, you know that the object was distant, because the sound needed to travel huge distances in order to get on and back. Yes. If you know what is the echolocation in bats, on sonars, in warships, for example, this is the same idea. So, why I'm talking about this? Because the ultrasonography works on this principle. So, we get some ultrasounds on the body. These ultrasounds penetrates the body, so get through, creates some vibration in our body, and those vibrations, when there is something hard, would bounce back. And we would see those rays that are bounced back. So when there is some difference in density, for example, bone, lung, or even smaller different densities, yes, like for example we have some fluid collection, some hematoma, some inflammation, some fluid in the place that should not be, and so on. We can see it through the ultrasonography. What also is important about this technique is that the ultrasonography is very safe. We do not have any ionizing radiation here, so we do not have a risk associated with this ionizing radiation. Because I did not specify what is the biggest risk for ionizing radiation. Generally, when we are producing ionizing radiation and the patient is absorbing this ionizing radiation, what we are afraid most is cancer. The risk of developing cancer after the RTG or CT scan or nuclear medicine studies is very slim. Yet, cancer is really scary disease, so it's better to be safe than sorry, generally speaking. Okay, so let's go. Wait a moment. Okay. And the last big thing, maybe not the last at all, but the last big thing that we will talk about now as a techniques is the magnetic resonance imaging. So we'll not delve into the details of the physics. It's too complicated. However, still the idea that I was talking about earlier. So that we have some type of energy that we can see by detectors holds. So here, thanks to the magnets, we can produce the radio waves that penetrates through the body, and we can see them on specialized receptors generally. So the idea is the same, yes? But we have radio waves, not the ultrasound, not the X-rays, different type of rays. Not critically important to know how they are called. But it is very important to know that this is also very safe method. So these radio waves and these magnetic fields are generally considered to be very safe. Sometimes it's even done for the pregnant women. Yes, so it's considered really safe method, and it's also extremely sensitive. So if you would get one study that is the best, we can usually think about the magnetic resonance or some nuclear medicine studies. So the magnetic resonance imaging is very good. It's safe and shows us a lot of information. The biggest problem with the magnetic resonance, there are two. First, it's very expensive. Second, it's slow. And third, it is not very good to show bones. So when we want to show the bones, the best is CT scan. Yes, this is, for example, the MRI. But when you want to show the soft tissue, like a brain, the magnetic resonance is the best. Brain, but also the mediastinum, the liver, maybe not the lungs. Yes, the magnetic resonance is not good for bones and lungs, but for everything else, generally it is far better than the CT scan, but also far more expensive and slower. So, let's go on. Contrast material. So what is the contrast material? The contrast material is something that we give to the patient, inject, give orally, it doesn't matter, in order to get more details from the picture that we are looking at. So, why it's important? Let's get back to the idea that we had earlier about the interfaces. So, interface is something, some place that we have difference in densities, yes? So we have water and air, yes? And then water. For example, so when we shine light here, only a bit would get through. When we shine light here, nearly all would get through, yes? So just get me some other color. So we can exactly guess where are, for example, the lungs, because a lot of it would get through, and we will know where is the border of the lung. Yes? It would be hard to say exactly what is happening in the lung, for example, on RTG, but we will know exactly where it ends and when it starts, because there is this interface, this difference in density. And it is very important concept. Because what we are doing when we are giving the contrast medium. For example, when we would give it orally, let's get it. When we give it orally, yes, let's make it face. Well, let's imagine this is a face. This is the esophagus, and we gave it orally, we get to the stomach. Okay. So this contrast would travel through the gastrointestinal system. And generally, it's hard to visualize well the gastrointestinal system, for example, on the RTG. But if you would give the contrast medium, there would be a huge difference of densities, because the contrasts are generally have very high densities or very low densities. Generally, the density that is very different from the other structures around. And you would have such interface, yes? So you would have a contrast that has that has very high density, far higher than everything around, and it would be just clearly visible, yes? So everything around would have far smaller density, and we would have a huge density in this area where we have a contrast medium, or very small density, depending on the contrast. So it would create the interface, and it doesn't matter where is it. Usually the contrast medium is given intravenously to show us the vessels. So in this case, the vessels would be, for example, if you would get the iodine contrast on the CT scan, or gadolinium, no, never mind, to gadolinium. When you get the iodine contrast in the CT scan, the vessels would become highly dense radiographically. So we would easily see those vessels on the CT scan. Or theoretically speaking, on RTG also. It doesn't matter. In case of the contrast medium, it would work as good. The iodine contrast medium would work as well on the CT scan or RTG. Because it creates the contrast. Because it creates this difference in densities. So the X-rays would be stopped by it. And you would see where are those vessels in the body. This is the idea behind the contrast medium. Is there something more clever? Okay, so contrast material increases the difference in density between anatomic structures. And intravenous iodine-based contrast carries the risk of causing acute renal failure and renal allergic reaction. Also, it may be dangerous for patients with the thyroid diseases. So, as you've probably seen when you are working with the patients, before the CT scan, generally we need to perform two main studies. We need to measure the TSH the TSH, and we need to measure the creatinine. Why we need to do these two things? Because we are afraid of the complications from the thyroid, so we need to measure the function of the thyroid by measuring the TSH. And we are afraid of damaging the kidneys, so we need to measure the function of the kidneys by measuring creatinine. So these are two things that we need to measure before the CT scan with contrast, because we are afraid of the complication of the contrast medium. If no contrast is done, we would not need those studies. Yes, these studies are done because we are afraid of the complications of the contrast medium. Okay, the end of first presentation.